Okay, well, welcome everyone. As you're coming in, I invite you to pop your name in the chat. If you're not sure where that is, just along the bottom bar of your Zoom menu, you'll see where it says a speech bubble and you can write your name in the chat there. It'd be great to see where you're all from. And as people are coming in, and maybe there are one or two having an issue, I'm not sure, I will do my best to keep the flow, but the welcoming just as an aside as I can. I am Mama G, and I am a woman who has a passion for those of us who are inhabiting the digital space now as parents. So when I talk about parents, I'm going to use that name, that word loosely. And if you think it might mean carer, guardian, somebody who is responsible perhaps in a role in their job or has safeguarding responsibilities, but certainly, everyday moms, dads, grandparents, and special key people in the child's life. So I'm going to use that word parent in that sense. So welcome as you're coming in. Just put yourself on mute if you can, but let me know by raising your hand if you want to say anything. More than welcome to have a little bit of Q&A going on. And just let me know if there's something you want to stop and interrupt with. So at the end of this call, I'm going to offer something special for those of you who want to take this further with me. But in itself, this session will stand in its own right and it will add value. And I hope that I'm able to offer you some insights, some tips, resources, and drop a few names, maybe books that you might be interested in, podcasts such as that. And certainly in itself, it will be of value to you if you're a parent of a child from babyhood right the way through to teens. That's my aim today, but there will be more for you if you want to hang on and see if this could be something you want to take further, or even someone else you know might want to take it further. So what's the purpose today? I know that some of you may have seen me on the YouTube channel Mama G and Web3 on digital parenting. And I do have a website called Jill Bentham Declares, a Facebook site where you can see some of what I'm up to. And I post regularly as well on lots of things. However, this particular idea, this forum, this cohort, if it becomes a group, and it's just an experimental thing here today, it's going to bring the opportunity for you if you're a Christian or if you have some Christian heritage in your background and you think, what can the world offer me as a parent? How can I get stability and good habits and character formation into my child when there are so many influences that are a struggle to manage? And I see a lot of conversation that's out there at the moment about the concerns about digital and the risks and the pros and the cons. And I'm not wanting to take a negative effect, but as a Christian, definitely think that there isn't much that I'm yet aware of that is helping us to navigate this space as parents and give us confidence, give us tools and tips. There are resources out there and they're excellent, and I will name a few of those. I want to help you as much as I can. But there isn't really anyone that's putting this in the context of a faith or a character forming approach or a philosophy to life, which I would loosely call a Christian worldview. I don't see that anywhere else. So this is what seems to be unique at the moment. So I encourage you to see if you can find anything out there. I'd be fascinated to know. But that's my USP really. And I want to start with a saying of Jesus, which is in John chapter 14, where he says in his prayers for us, let not your heart be anxious. And it struck me the other day when I was reading that this term, let not, is a very active instruction to us not to worry and not to allow the pressures, the intimidation that can come through a heavy diet of news and scaremongering and kind of attitudes about where the future AI might take us and the fake news that we are exposed to and all the difficulties that come with that. We have to be able to know how not to let that phase us, how not to let that unsettle us. Have a way of explaining that to ourselves and, of course, our children. And so, in that sense, I want to give you more than just what's out there, which is to add in those resources, those tools, those books, those podcasts that are out there. They're great, they're absolutely brilliant. But how do we implement them? How do we make them part of the fabric of our family life as someone that wants to really make that work for our children? So I say to you that there's quite a bit out there now. There's emerging research, and about a year ago, Jonathan Haidt produced his book, The Anxious Generation, and that book has taken the world by storm. It's certainly become a focus of a lot of conversations, such as in LinkedIn, and you can look up his profile on there. And he's certainly begun to interpret the social research that's coming together that says that we've exposed our children, sadly, unknowingly, unrealizingly, that they have been the Gen Z generation, or the Gen Z, if you're in America, have been the guinea pigs of access to phones, digital phones, and then most significantly, smartphones, that the smartphones have been the one thing that have started to have a very negative eroding effect on our children's mental and emotional health. So, you know, Jonathan's done a great job in pulling together these things and alerting us to the dangers and showing us how play has become such a scarce resource, that we are scared to let our children experience risk. We've been so conscious about physical safeguarding that we've been extremely careless about digital safeguarding. So as a Christian, I mean, he isn't a Christian. He's coming with some really valuable information, and there's a whole body of science that will evolve. But, you know, I'm concerned, and I need to really get this across, that we cannot afford to wait for the body of evidence to consolidate. We can't wait for that to become established, because all the time that we're waiting, our children are growing fast, and we know that they are growing fast. If you have a baby, as I'm sure you know, my first grandchild is now 4 months old, and every time I see her, maybe once a week, once a fortnight, I can't believe it when I see her. She looks different every time, and she's learning things at a fascinating rate. So we can't afford to wait until evidence proves which is a strategy to take. We have to work with more knowledge and insight and wisdom. And if as Christians we have access to the wisdom of one another and the age-old wisdom that comes through life in the Spirit and growth through biblical understanding and the fruits of the Spirit that come from that, then we have so much more resources at our fingertips. But let not being anxious means let not be ignorant. Let's not be ignorant. Let's understand what these resources are. Let's get hold of the things that have been created, the podcasts and the books, and I want to recommend a few of those today. There's another lady, an American, a Brit called Elizabeth Milovodov, and she has a Facebook community full of tips and resources for digital parenting, and she has a wealth of information and expertise in law, and she is also able to bring that to the table. There's a lady here in the UK called Charlotte Armitage, a doctor, a psychologist, who's made a debut with a TED Talk and a book just in the last couple of months called The Zombie Generation. Again, along the lines of what Jonathan Haidt has been providing to us, but this time from the perspective of a psychologist who has access to her own daughter and her experiences as a teen, but also as a safeguarding officer for children that are involved in film and media, and protection for them in a world which is certainly one that might be a little bit much for young actors and actresses. So Charlotte Armitage is another one to look out for. And I would recommend you to also, if you've never used Care for the Family, if you're in the UK, they're an excellent family resource. And they've always been on the heels of every new threat, every new temptation, every new parenting challenge, such as drugs and alcohol and grief and bereavement and parenting as singles. There's so much that they are now beginning to turn and address in terms of the digital threats to family life. You only needed to have seen the film, the series on Netflix in the last few weeks called Adolescence to know how concerned we are as a society about the effects of exclusion and social isolation and misogyny and really deformed relationships within families that are imploding because they do not know how to deal with this extra influence within the family dynamic. So there's much out there and I want to bring those to your attention, but let's get back to what we are doing, because I just want to say a little bit about me. Why am I doing this? I'm Jill Bentham. I just turned 60 and that is hard to believe. I'm a mom of a 30-year-old and a 27-year-old. And for about half of their childhood into adult life, I was a single parent. So I have experienced that as well. Been a working mom all my life, and I've managed to navigate some of those challenges. So in this season, having gone through divorce, having gone through remarriage, and now enjoying a really wonderful season of the fruit of family, now in the next generation, beginning to enjoy adulthood, career, and relationships and childbirth as well. So I've been a believer in Christ for 45 years. So yeah, as a mere 15-year-old, I became a Christian. And I would say that I've always wanted to understand the latest thing. Much of an imaginator. I think a lot, I reflect and plan, and I love teaching and education, and I did get down the line of education in nursing, adult nursing, for quite some time. So with all that, my personality being somebody who's very empathic and compassionate and very artistic, really, I've always said I'm kind of frustrated artist. I've always found ways of creating and getting an outlet for my imagination in terms of work and alongside in my personal life. So I am a bit of a self-taught digital user. You know, in my age group, I was 30, 31 before I really took a deep breath and learned and taught myself computer use and PC, word processing, desktop, everything like that. So it's come along and it's been self-taught mostly. And I lived through the era of the coming of email and the internet. And you don't need me to tell you how much that's all changed in the last 20 years. I wouldn't say I've ever developed my reflexes to be able to enjoy gaming. That's certainly beyond me. I always wish that I could have participated with my son with his PSP game, but no, that never really came along. However, I stuck with and I'm interested in this because it's our children's world, it's their upbringing and it's their experience, which has led us to this place where we're now highly distracted by opportunities galore, whether they are games, whether they're screens, whether they are interfaces that we do our shopping with, plan our routes, engage with our friends. There's so much that is really all dependent on this device. And it's not just the devices, it's the whole digital landscape that our children are now living and breathing. Now, my call a long time ago came from a simple little verse in Acts chapter 5:20, which said to me long ago when I was involved in more teaching, that I would take my stand and declare this whole gospel of life. And I've taken that on board and I have included and addressed that. And I've always had that at the back of my mind when I've written books. And I have become an entrepreneur, but some of that has not really taken off. And so over the years, and I'll explain a bit more about that, I've been a bit cautious. I've been a bit British, you know, a little bit too politically correct. But I really feel like maybe with age, with the less self-consciousness that comes with age and maturity, I'm taking myself a lot less seriously, and I can start to think about addressing a problem that nobody much is speaking about. So the short version is first half of my career, successful, somewhat earnest, somewhat naive, took some devastating decisions midlife and disrupted everything by having a failed ministry, a failed marriage, and well-intentioned sidestep into all of that, even whilst I was still working. Didn't do anything that I expected. And I'll be honest, I don't think it was steeped in prayer, and it was more about good intentions. All of that's humbled me. All of that's given me a real respect for listening to God. And I don't know if you've heard of Craig Groeschel, who leads one of the most digitally entrepreneuring churches in the US. But he said once that creativity is always recycling itself. And I took that really as an invitation to reinvent everything that I had done in ministry as a pastor, as a teacher, of a Bible learner, to bring that into some sort of form that would be meaningful to people who are not so sure of any of that. And so I developed this philosophy called the flow of fruition, which is what it says. Essentially, it's character building, it's character forming, and it's what we all do as parents and what we hope we're doing well as parents. So that's a clue that this is all hinged around a vision for discipleship. And we'll come back to that. So that brings me to where things are coming together to this moment where you happen to be meeting now and coming on this call or catching the replay later, where you're meeting at this time of converging of interests, of skills, of experience, which is a beautiful place to be in life, that at the second half, where maybe some of the pressures are off. I've finished, I've brought my children up, I'm nearly finishing my career, and it's a wonderful time to give back. And that's what I'm here for. There was a guy called John Tyson, who is quite big in the Australian church, a theologian and author, who said this: discipleship is the future of the church. And I agree with that, but I think it's more than that. It's about the future of character formation and healthy society and healthy families. And we can do some of that even when the church is not doing any of that. Who's doing the discipleship? Simple word, it just means growing, becoming mature, growing in stature and favor with people around you and with God. And you're on a journey with God, whatever that means, however much or however little yet you understand of what that is, we're all growing in that. So who is doing the discipleship in your children's lives? Because we have to balance this, and we always have had to. Even go back to the Victorian age, where sometimes well-to-do parents used to be in a very separate area of the house from their children, and they'd hand off the responsibility for the children's upbringing to the nursery maid, to the governess, and they had their own nursery and they ate their meals separately to the parents. Another time we have perhaps had big families in poorer families in ages gone by, and mostly it's been the siblings, the older children, who brought up the younger ones because families were so big, and let's face it, the parents were exhausted. Or was it the TV? You know, we have grown up with increasing access to TV and then multiple channels, and channel hopping, which became a thing. Videos came along, and we could babysit and we could stick our children in front of a screen for much longer. Back-to-back cartoons, which I would have loved aged 5, and we couldn't do that then. But has the TV been discipling our children? And in the 80s, MTV, do you remember that? MTV, the music channel, and there was a lot of concern about some of the standards of undress that you would see in the videos, and they're nothing compared to what is out there today. So now we have our digital age, and we have increasingly demands on our attention. No longer are we fighting for people's money so much as attention. That's the new economy. And our children have been sucked into that before they even understand what's happening to them. So they say it takes a whole village to raise a child. And I'm just working with that concept that as a community, as a cohort, potentially, we could do that for each other. And if you've got that in your community, fantastic. If you've got that in your church, brilliant. If you have that in a life group, or if you have that in your own nuclear family, and you're very conscious and very intentional about what diet of screen time and what combination of eye contact and conversation and interest and engagement you're giving as against what we think is a safe opportunity to keep someone, a child, in front of a screen, safe away from the street, maybe safe away from bad influences, but are we doing them any favors? You know what? Generation Z have suffered, and I think we need to apologize, even if you are familiar with the concept of repenting for what we've allowed them to absorb. And we only need to look at the suicidal tendencies, depression, high levels of anxiety, sense of despair, loss of control, or being unseen. It's a massive concern for the mental health of that generation. We have done damage, and they have been our guinea pigs, unfortunately. So we have to say sorry for that. I want to give you an example of a few people that I have met in the canteen of a job recently that I've had, where the generation of approximately, I'd say, 17 to 25-year-olds have been in a fairly reasonably paid but monotonous type of work, where at lunch, at canteen time, they have come in with their screens, and they have hunched over those screens, and even amongst their own peer group, being sat at one table in 3 different worlds at the same time, with poor posture, no eye contact, inability to relate to older adults in the room, such as myself, as if I and they, others of us, were not even relevant. And this is sad. This is sad. I have not taken offense. I have thought to myself, what have we done? And you know those characters on buses that you ride and in the cafes where you sit. You've seen that yourself. I'm Gen X. That's just after the baby boomers, and I'm one of the last of the Gen X. But the Gen Z have suffered. And I think today this session is to give 2 priorities, really. It's to give you the opportunity to think about how we could reach, recover, redeem those who have maybe been damaged in some way, are struggling with personality issues and mood disorders or ADHD, and we haven't got all the answers, but is there anything we can do as people who love one another, who love kids, who love young people, who can reach out and start to engage and purposefully prise them open, if that's what it takes, to get a relationship going with some of the people around you in your world, to reach, to recover, and to redeem. And I'm giving a few examples of those kind of people: the geeks, the gamers, the people who are lost in their own digital space. Maybe they've become sexualized, maybe they've become corrupted in some way, victimized, and maybe they are in a very scary place where suicidal ideas are very much a part of their thought life. And we don't need to be reminded of how many young lives have been lost even in that way, before they could get the attention that they needed from their carers, from their parents. It was too late. We can't afford to let that happen again. And although I don't think I have an awful lot in common with those kind of individuals who have definitely been hurt by our carelessness, I still, and you, if you have no real connection or engagement with the disenfranchised young person that has got sucked into that, if you don't feel that, then I would challenge you, like I've been challenged, in the way that Peter was challenged when he had a dream or a vision of a blanket coming down from heaven full of all the things that Jews were supposedly forbidden to eat. And he was horrified that in this vision, he felt that God was telling him to eat these things, which would, in his mind, corrupt him and taint him and make him impure. Now, I'm not saying those people that I've just described are impure, but you may feel as incapacitated as Peter did to know how that can even be a thing that you would do, that where you would go, how you would know what to do. Maybe not, but if that's something that concerns you, and it concerns me, I think we can find ways to support one another in reaching, and love is the essence of the way to do that. So maybe that would be a concern. Maybe that would be a thing that this group could address, and we would support one another in doing so. Secondly, it's the next generation, the ones that are babies now, the ones who will be called the alpha generation, and maybe beyond that. We haven't really got a suitable name for the beta generation, whoever they will be or what we call them eventually. But they are going to be the first ones who've been born straight into the smartphone era from the day they were born. And just reading Charlotte Armitage's book about that, the phone is a thing in their lives even before birth. The ultrasound that's snapped and taken and sent all around their WhatsApp groups, the filming of the birth even on a smartphone, instantly sent over the internet into another country across the ocean. So, you know, from birth, the digital space has invaded and become a dynamic in that family already in these days. And we can't turn the clock back, and we don't want to. We just want to grow in wisdom and understanding of how to handle this. So Alpha Generation are now here. Can we support them? Can I, can you, can we as grandparents, carers, all of those different dynamics that have some contact, experience of maturing and raising children, whether it be brand new or even possibly that you think you might need that information one day when you do have a child. Can we collaborate in a really beneficial way to have this safe space together where we'll share ideas, strategies, and pray and carry one another's burdens? This is what we need to do. We are not getting that yet from the church. We are not getting that yet from our communities. We are often fielding a lot of fear that comes through some of this new research, and we need one another's support. So as Mama G, on Web3 and digital parenting, this is something I am offering and I'm testing as a service that I could facilitate with you and for you. So two things: helping the Gen Z or Gen Z who have been damaged. And if that's your child, we want to get behind you and help you with that. And raising the Alpha generation who right from the get-go have these glowing screens in their faces day in, day out. So what am I here for? I want to make it clear. If this is not for you, that's fine. I want this to be an explanation of what's available. And if you can go away and find Charlotte Armitage's work and Jonathan Haidt and other resources that you will find inevitably through that search, great. But I want to offer to you, and to those of you that maybe you think you'd like to share this with who need this, the opportunity to be part of a private Facebook community where everything we do will be within the confines of that safe space and it will not be public. In that space, that will be something that we feel we can use for coaching, for prayer, for really encouragement, and all that we can do to support one another as peers, parents, and grandparents, for instance. So we can find that community. We can have confidential support, peer learning, coaching. I am a facilitator and accredited coach with John Maxwell team. If that adds anything to you, it's really fundamentally my love for people that makes me want to do this. I think we could bring our own case studies about your specific children or anonymously those that you have some work responsibility for, where maybe, although I am not an educationalist in children's development, the reason we're here is because of our love for people and our desire for them to prosper and flourish. So this will be private and it will be paid, and there's going to be a subscription for that service, and it will be £14.99 in British pound, and that will be debit monthly. For that, you would get a weekly call with the media members that turn up on the day. Every time that call would be recorded for 1 hour, and then it would be replayed to all the membership. Those will be weekly, as I say, and it may be that we have to split them into emerging needs if they become very distinct, perhaps, for instance, around early years or teens. That's just an obvious possibility. But whatever that may suggest to you, if it's for you, then, you know, I'm going to give you that link so that you can go and register. So this has been a taster webinar. That will be an ongoing service that you can invest your parenting into, and therefore supply every need that your child has to teach them in the way that they should go. So I'm not denying that there are expert podcasts out there. They're fantastic. There are downloads, there are events such as Buy Care for the Family. And we have, if your church is involved in this series, maybe that are teaching some of this so that we can navigate this digital world as Christians and as parents. But I'm not hearing much about that. And so this is a starting point for those of you who need it. I think we've got the bricks, we've got all of those resources, a bit like the bricks of a building. But we need the mortar, we need that cement, we need Holy Spirit wisdom, guidance and leading, anointing, if you want to call it that, which will bring a different dynamic for us who need more than just information, because we need fellowship in this bringing up of children in an age that we don't even have any precedent for. We've never been here before. We haven't lived this life as children. This world is so different. We cannot imagine what it is like to experience the digital age through a baby's life, through their eyes. And we need to be able to bounce those ideas off in a safe and I suppose I would say a consecrated environment, because that's what I see it as. And it's open whether you have faith or not, understanding that that may add value to where you are and maybe the very rope that you need to hang on to. So what do I think you'll find in that community? You will get accountability, you will get encouragement, coaching, the ability to critique things that are happening in the world through a biblical mind view or mindset. And also, I'm believing for prophetic insights that will be given as we move forward in supporting one another and getting to know one another and having the ability to tune in to what God would say to us as parents and digital navigators. So this is new parenting territory, very, very new parenting territory. And it's new territory for the kingdom, actually. If I just give you a glimpse of something else that I'm seeing a need for, it's that the kingdom of God has the opportunity to take new territory in the metaverse. And that means that we are actually visiting places in the virtual sense, whether that be through augmented or digital reality, that are being created and could be created by anointed creatives, rather than simply it being given over to unchristian or non-Christian or not yet Christian believers. And so this is new territory. It's like we're taking ground. It's like the new Wild West for the kingdom. I don't see why we should not be inhabiting it, and that every place we put our foot, we can possess in the name of Jesus. And so it's a kind of prophetic mission for psychosocial, spiritual, emotional health for our children. and for their journey and for their development, and also for the spaces within the digital metaverse to be healthy, wholesome, nurturing, and to redeem those that have already become dark and have already become very dangerous places for not just children, let's face it. So those are things that are beyond and beside this passion that I have for digital disciples, because that is the name of the digital Facebook community group that is being launched today. Digital disciples, do you see yourself as in need of digital discipleship for and on behalf of your children who need digital discipleship? It's just simply another element of growth in stature and favor with God and with man. And as a community who are not yet finding this in their immediate locality or maybe their church and experience, then let's plug a gap which is needed that can go beyond what is stressing our children and give them our support in and through their growth and upbringing. And if you're not already convinced of this alarm call that I am making today, or this rally, you do know, don't you, that we should train up a child in the way he or she should go. We do know that the Bible says in Proverbs, how can a young man or woman keep their way pure? It is by hiding your word in their heart. And that word is something that can come in multimedia form. And so I haven't even touched on the fact that I have a passion and a vision for a game, which is character forming and rewards tasks and projects and puzzles and offshoot little areas within the game to reward character formation, teamwork, generosity, humility, self-sacrifice. Doesn't sound exciting, but I'm going to make sure it is. And if you don't know this already, I have written a taster of the genre for that game lore called Trunked, which is a book for young adult fiction about a group of children who are escalated through their journey inside the giant redwood sequoia called Zulon. I'll say no more about that, but I want you to just get a flavor of how this is oozing out of my imagination, because I know that there is a time that has been set for this to happen. It's like a Kairos time. It's coming together with my ability, hopefully, to retire in the not too distant future, to pay attention to the needs of this age and to dedicate prayer, as I know I am called to intercede for the digital space and to be a digital gatekeeper or doorkeeper over the things that come and go into the digital space, so that the kingdom of God may prosper and may enlarge and increase, and that territory becomes bigger and greater than ever. All of that is just the context. This here is about you, your parenting, your ability to raise a child in the way that they should go when you know there are limits to what you can do. And there are. All of us as parents have only got one background upbringing to draw from, unless we have other resources, other voices and influences, and we choose those wisely. And I'm giving you a chance to choose those wisely. If this is not for you, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I'm really thankful that you took the time this afternoon or morning, or wherever you are in the world, to take this on board. But I want you to know, to think and reflect on this. People will say, oh, it would only cost you like 4 coffees, 1 coffee a week for the price of this subscription. And okay, but we all like our coffee. So maybe that's not the thing you want to give up. But think about it as an investment. Is there anything that you would rather spend £15 a month on, whatever that is in your currency? Is there anything you would rather do than invest in your child's character formation, spiritual journey, and the ability to be resilient, emotionally strong, self-regulating, emotionally regulating, attentive, sociable, all of these things that are being undermined by the digital attention grabbing. And in all of that, I am not undermining the value of this new age of exploration. I am fascinated. I tell you, I was in London just a few days ago, and I went to the Van Gogh or Van Gogh, depending where you are, or how you say that, to the immersive exhibition of the Van Gogh works. And in two parts of the exhibition, one, I was in a Meta headset that gave me a view, a whole 360 view of the environments that Van Gogh painted, seen in the eyes of Van Gogh, the color palettes he used, with the brush strokes he used, the whole landscape was around me. It was amazing. And then in another part of the exhibition, we sat in a large environment, bare walls, but they were soaked with digital imagery that just swirled around all the walls, the floor. And with 1 minute, we're in a shower of petals that became sunflowers, almond blossom. We were sitting under the crows in the wheat fields, all the famous paintings by Van Gogh. And it was amazing. And I saw scripts of his letters, texts that he wrote to his brother, thousands of letters that he wrote, and some of the classic phrases that came from this poor troubled man who only lived to be 37. And yet this man who was so prolific in his short life, who died 135 years ago, can you believe it, is still someone, and his work is still something that we are constantly revisiting, recreating, reinventing, re-experiencing. And I want that to be something that we can add to those that follow us, that we would be able to be a legacy, bring a legacy of influence that people are still shaped by and able to re-examine and reinterpret even 135 years after we've died. And that's only going to happen if we're intentional and if we know what mark we want to leave, and we make the structures, the strategies and the habits and the lifestyles that will establish those impacts in their lives. So you're already, if you're a young parent, you're already fielding all the tasks and challenges of teaching manners, eating without mess, learning letters, motor skills, standing, walking, everything that comes in that first year of life, and then 3 or 4 early years before school. And there's so much for you to do. Good language, good behavior, managing tantrums, goodness me, we've got to go there soon. And, you know, the cognitive development, the relational development, these are things that a child really needs to be allowed to explore and experience and watch and copy and learn. And I just want to make sure that we have a place to go where we feel like we're losing track or we're losing control, or our children are developing some odd behaviors and habits. Where do you take that if you haven't got community, family, believers, fellow support? If there was ever a time where we needed discipleship, it's now. Absolutely. We cannot do life without this inner growth that's come from those who've gone before us, and then our ability to settle that into our lives as something we want to. I watched once a podcast by Simon Bartlett, who was interviewing Mo Gawdat, the CEO of Google. A couple of years ago, he resigned from Google. Some of the concerns he had were about the evolution of artificial intelligence, and he became convinced that there were going to be sentient beings, machines, that would be able to deduce and think for themselves. And that's a big discussion and debate, isn't it, in that field of experience. So Mo Gawdat was very interesting in that interview, and certainly recognise that he had his own point of view, and it was just one point of view, but a very informed and very expert point of view. And he said this in his book Scary Smart, and also to his interviewer Simon Bartlett. in Diary of a Chief Executive. He said, "We must be good parents to the machines." I'll just let that sink in for a minute. We must be good parents to the machines. And if we have to do that, how much more to our children? If we've got artificial intelligence that is going to be copying, being programmed by us, by code that really directs their activities and their decisions, then how much more so must our children? He told a story about how they had on one level of the Google offices a whole platform of experimental robots being trained to move like a robot arm in a fairground, the ball from a cluster of objects and by a robot arm to be reached out, lifted up, taken across and dropped somewhere else. We've all played with one of those slot machines, I'm sure. And every day he went past the door to this level on that experiment, that particular floor of the office. And he never saw much going on other than just random robotic movements across hundreds of these individual robots on the floor. One day he looked through the window and he saw one robot had figured out somehow how to move this ball from A to B. And he thought, wow, that was an expensive experiment. Looked the next day through the door and every single one of those robots were doing that properly. Every one of them overnight had picked up on that skill. That is a bit weird, isn't it? That is crazy. And I just want you to think about the fact we don't really know what the world's going to look like. We haven't got some of the stakes in terms of making big decisions about how much that will infiltrate our society. And I think it's probably gone beyond us being able to stop that becoming a very intrusive thing. So let's work with it and let's be ready for it. And as Christians, we know there are times are changing. Definitely, we know that. Let's be on our guard. Let's be ready. Let's be equipped. Let's equip one another. Let's carry one another's burdens. So who's going to disciple your children? Will it be the robots? Will it be the screen time? Will it be the game concept, the game law that you buy into without realizing the inner workings of that game that you hand to your 10-year-old? I just want you to listen to this extract from Dr. John Trainer, always thought to have been C.S. Lewis, we're not sure which, but he said, "Children are not a distraction from more important work. They are the most important work." So, in other words, the legacy that matters, that really matters to our children, is not what we've built in the world. It's who we've raised and whether they felt safe and seen and loved in your presence. And I commend to you that task. It's one which can be thankless day in, day out, when all you seem to do is jiggle a baby on your arm and get up and stand up and sit down and roll over and make something to eat and then tidy up the mess. You know what it's like. But do they feel seen? Do they feel safe? Do they feel loved? Are you able to interpret their needs? Or are you leaving that to something else? So, call to action today. I've explained, I've shared my heart. I hope you've got my heart. I'm going to send the replay to everyone that registered, including you guys on the call today. And I will definitely be ready and waiting to do this and to keep sending out this message every month. Every month this is going out. We're going to call in, we're going to find the people who need this support. And if you can think of anyone that needs to see this replay, please send it across. I insist it doesn't have to be someone who's fully convinced of their faith, but they need to know that there is hope in Jesus Christ and the strategies and the wonderful attitudes towards people and towards children that he had. So thanks for coming. The replay will be available to you in an email. And I want to really thank you for the time that you spent on this. I will ask you to go to the link if you would like to subscribe for $14.99 to become one of the digital disciples in this private exclusive group, which will be confidential. It will meet on Wednesdays, and it will be British summer time or UK time, as we are now in the summer, at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, starting Wednesday, the 7th of May this year. So just a few days away from now, I will be kicking that off. And if you want anyone to turn up inside there, then they need this link. And I'm going to give this link to you in the chat. And let me copy that in for you now. So just go and find that. And I would like you to decide, was this just a useful conversation? Great. Was it for you? Great. Register here on the link in the chat. And I'm going to read that out to you in case you can't see it on the replay. It's www.makefunofffaith.com/join468347. I did have a bit.ly link and it's become corrupted. I think somebody wasn't very happy about this call going out today, so we just go with that for now. www.makefunofffaith.com/join468347. You can also find me on @JillDares in Instagram, and entirely free. By all means, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is called Mama G and Web3 on digital parenting. I'll be adding more and more content to that as well, but that's where you can go if you need to just keep tabs on what I'm doing. But the stuff, the real value will be inside Digital Disciples. So get your ticket now and subscribe and send to someone else maybe who hasn't yet heard about this. I really do want to say you're amazing. I know you're here because you care about putting a really good imprint on your children or those children that you are responsible for. And I just thank you for what you're doing for them, for helping them to become such effective, functioning, wonderful, loving people in their future lives. Let's do this for them because they're going to need all the help we can get. And just one final word, if you're not really sure what the metaverse is, have a look at this film, Ready, Steady, Play. You can find that on any of your film channels. It'll give you a little bit of an idea of how isolated we could become if we're living in the physical world, but actually only just bodily. We're not engaged with it, with our minds and with our emotions and our relationships. It's a really fascinating look at what could be coming our way. And it's not all negative. We can harness all this for good and for the kingdom. Remember that. That's why we're here, because we are change makers, pioneers, and we are supporting one another on this journey in the 21st century that none of us have ever done before. I'm going to say bye to you now. Remember, @JillDares and Mama G at Web3 on digital parenting. And that's Mama G because I'm Jill. See you soon. Thanks for the time. Take care.